by Ta.
Cô tập truyện của lấy.
Và anh cô em ơi,
Are we up on recording?
nãy video nãy camera. Ui, xong chân cái sầm lấy nha. Going đấy.
Khơi.
Dùng going đấy.
Ai bắt có một
Nhưng mà nghĩ sao mà dùng.
nó vẫn chỉnh như
You go over there. I need to lay down. Yeah, I need
Lay
to lay
down.
down. I need to be comfortable before I can work.
Without further ado, I would love to invite the first speaker of the government side to deliver a speech here.
Happy time.
I will do the timing. I will start whenever you start the speech. So,
Alright. So should be like good morning or good afternoon.
it's
Yeah. Good night, everyone. So now today you can see that in ladies and gentlemen, the developing country, the first thing that we are worried about is the education. And even though the government in the developing country try to make the education in terms of the primary school or secondary school is free, but even the case that those education is free, but they have a lot of case or a lot of problems that the family they still send their own children to the working place. Why they do that? Because that they are still living in the poor condition. They believe that if they send their children from school to the workplace to earn the money to support the family, that is why we believe that even though the primary school or secondary school is free, but still the dropout rate is still high. And we see that this dropout rate of students is very important and significant that the government have to handle. That is why our team government would like to introduce the policy that we believe that this policy that can provide the welfare payment to the full family to support their daily basic in order to survive. And this can believe that support those family that in terms of their daily life. That's so with this, there is no struggle to send their own children to drop out of school and then go to work to support the family. So our policy, which is about the welfare payment, we believe that the welfare payment we don't give them in terms of the money or the cash because we can see a lot of risks. That is why we provide them in kind, which is in kind in terms of the product. That the payment, that what kind of this, they can exchange those in kind product, which is a coupon that they can exchange it to buy the products in the cheaper price. And another one, how can we? And that we believe that they can use that coupon to exchange the products such as the food, such as for the healthcare, for the hospital, which is we believe that it is the basic. Sorry, sir. And so how can we get all those money and how can we provide all those welfare to those poor family? So ladies and gentlemen, we as a government, we try to cooperate with the company and try to cooperate and how? Because we try to reduce the tax from those companies. For example, the company of the right or company of the healthcare or the hospital, that we try to reduce the tax because we believe that if we do the contract with those companies in order to have this for them to have the incentive in order to reduce the price for the poor people who exchange their coupon to afford their products. So we believe that even though that the government in the developing country, we are the developing country, we know that we are poor, we cannot give the 100% to have the poor people. That is why we believe that the contract can at least reuse the 50% of the products for the daily life for those family people. So why this policy had to be introduced? Because we believe that if the better living condition of those poor people is increased, so we believe that those family people will send their children to the education. So when the children get to the education, we believe that the human resource in that country can develop more. So we believe this is very significant that we have to handle now. And another point, we try to know, as a government, we have to ensure that the children have to go to school. Even though we focus on the poor family, but it doesn't mean that all the poor family we can ensure that they can send their children to the school. So we also have the cooperation with the school as well. That how can we do that? We will check regularly the attendance or enrollments, or even and also we inspect whether the student attend the school or not. So with this, we believe that even though the poor family they already have the welfare payment, they send their children to school. And how? Because we inspect them in terms of the enrollment, in terms of the attendance, in terms of the student record as well. So all of this policy, because we try to first, our purpose is to build up the better living condition in the poor family. By how? By cooperating with the company, by reducing the tax in order to give them the incentive to have the poor family to exchange the products, such as the rise of healthcare condition. So all of this, we believe if they have the better living condition, that the student will the rate of the rate of students that pay from the school will reduce significantly. And furthermore, if every family can receive the good education, so in the future they will have the better living condition. Even though that in the future there is no they doesn't have the help from the government. So that is why we believe that our team will win this debate, because of this this policy that can reduce the problem and can weaken the problems in current situation. Thank you.
The speaker spoke for 5 minutes and 50 seconds now. Without further delay, I would love to invite the first speaker of the opposition side here.
Those who wants to go to school and those who are forced to prepare at school because of their living condition. Only to clarify a little bit nói thế này clarify để tháo policy cho nó comply with to them for the community.
Seven, 4.
Fine.
I just let Mary back home after 6 minutes.
Saya orang yang lebih paling distract. Contoh lebih.
I have one tip so people away from look at them, they very distracting.
It's okay.
Recharge for the audience.
ở đây nhảy to thế này đi đã mẹ reply speech.
Oh yeah, I said because you were talking when you're talking about Jordy. Okay, we'll be fluffy today.
A very good morning, churches, ladies and gentlemen.
Morning,
It's my
ma'am.
Oh my god,
Trust me, like stop saying good morning or good afternoon. You stress yourself over something that is really, very unimportant.
Today I'm pretty.
Speak up. Speak up.
Today my opponents look stupid.
Therefore, I win the debate. But that is just the first layer.
Without any further delay, I would like to invite the first speaker of the opposition side to deliver a speech. Here.
what we need to make sure today is that so what we need to make sure is that the debate today is going to cover two main themes that we need to focus on. Is that this is the current status quo that we accurately facing with ours, not only with our education system, but to the family to the poor family in the developing country who are struggling with the fact that they may or may not sending their student to school. So what we need to make sure is that firstly is that they are not only bounded by the family pressure in terms of their financial conditions, but the family itself are also having to also embed it with the philosophy that they may think that education itself is not really that necessary or even that compulsory to begin with. So our debate today, we need to make sure that not only we are trying to tackle the problem of the students dropping rate from the school, but we need to make sure that we also need to encourage people, especially to encourage the family to sending their students to school even more by seeing that to participate in school is really necessary and compulsory for them to do so. And what we can see from the government side, we only see that the only point of the floor which is only to tackle in terms of the dropout rate, because that they only see in terms of the dropout rate of the students who are already participating in school, but then they manage to quit out of nowhere, which is why they want to which is why they need to do some things with the family by sending by providing incentive in kind in terms of their using the products for that to sustain a better conditions in terms of their daily needs. So what we don't see is that the daily need are the only things that those people are struggling, and those poor families are struggling so far. So we do see that the problem that we can see right now is that they might be even more than that. Firstly, we need to make sure that the family will be having to live in within a value beyond their financial conditions. They need to firstly believe that education is really important for them to achieve even a higher success. They're not only trying to tackle, but we need to make sure that they are not only forcing the student not to go to school for the sake of to tackle their current financial condition or even to have survive their daily basic need, but they also need to consider that education will also be a tool to have them achieving even a higher success with this rich dominant culture. And now we as the opposition side, our goal today is our policy today. We want to achieve into two directions. So the first one is that we will be make sure that our educations we need to make sure that education will be seen as compulsory to both the family and also to the student as well. And second, at the same time, while we making educations as a tool to as a compulsory or obligatory tool to those people to be seen, we also will be willing to we also giving our alternative by giving job to the family. So our family here because we actually consider we actually refer to their parents, those poor the parents of those poor family, which are the reason why those students are not able to attend school at the first place. So we will be giving job to those parents in order to make them earn a better living wage in order to sustain their daily need basics. In this way, we are not trying to going into we are not doing, but yeah, but at the same time with this mechanism, we also need the intervention from the private sector as well. Okay, so now let's move on to firstly, why do we believe that the first thing is that why do we believe that the value our students not going to school today is not only focusing on the parents, it's not only focusing on the financial conditions only. Because firstly, those students are not only bounded by the family pressure, which is why they have to quit the school, which is why they need to quit the school. They need to they need to help out their family in terms of the family work, or even have to go to work in things in the factories in order to be more stabilized in their daily basic needs. But the second thing is that maybe perhaps they themselves don't even they still live in the factorialism, which means that they do not see how its education is really that necessary for them in the first place. Because what we are talking about today is talking about the poor family. We are talking about poor people who are short-sighted with the knowledge. Perhaps they say that by going to they say that by helping their kids to do to go to work to help out their family work will be better, make them earn earn money in a faster rate, which means that they need immediate cash. They think money, they see that this is the way that they can achieve success at a faster rate by having the immediate money on their hands. So they don't see that education will be a bridge to help them walking into to achieve even a higher success rate. They don't see it as this way, which is why they see that by having to quit their children to stop attending school immediately will make them better. We make we make the children better, help them out in terms of their finance and to support their finance better. So. And the reason and how right now I'm going to move on to how we are going to ensure that our policy will be effective. So first of all, we have mentioned that the private sector will be the intervention in terms of this case. So the private sectors will be the one to be cooperative with our government in order to ensure giving job to the family to the parents and they might as well so by doing so we're not only going to improve their living condition of those poor family to live with more financial support, but we are also going to make sure that those students will not be able to quit out of nowhere during their school attendance. Thank you.
The speaker spoke for 7 minutes and 14 seconds. Now I would love to invite the second speaker of the government side to deliver a speech. Here. Anh nhìn vô sai bọn này, nhìn vô sai Utimaran. Nhìn vậy chân này.
Shouldn't attack the policy and
Yes.
should be reinforced.
Reinforce.
Just reinforce for the sake of next speaker.
Some
Guys,
misunderstand
I
her.
need paper.
Cái misunderstand hướng ta. Hiền hết. Quy ta hướng ta nhưng không con từ lư tầm pi. Nhưng mà họ understand. Họ bị lối nhưng mà understand theo hiền ấy. Rồi bị đã drop out tiệt hay là tầm pi. Straight time misunderstand từ lư drop out.
Wait.
Clarify how before hay during.
Education and rights. Which one is more important? Are you hungry? And when you are hungry, do you think about food first or do you think about education first? So what the government side is trying to give people today is that people are having enough that they are able to think of education and they are able to send their children to go to education, which later leads them to a better way of life and lead the country to a better way of development. But ladies and gentlemen, first of all, let me start with explaining once again about how the government would like to pay the welfare to those poor families to ensure that their children go to school. First of all, let's answer a few simple questions. What is welfare payment in this case? Welfare payment in this case comes in kind coupons on basic needs. And what are those basic needs? Those basic needs are healthcare, number one, and number two, rice. Or probably in some other countries where rice is not the basic need, we're going to target the basic products. And how can the government do that, ladies and gentlemen? We come with a very simple concept, which is that the government would reduce the tax
Of course, it's like the first speaker have already explained to you that the government will make contract with the company. But how can they make contract? How can they make the company to be able to cooperate with the government? First of all, we do not oppress them, but we reduce the tax for them to make them compliant, and not reducing the tax alone. To make the coupon worthwhile for the poor, not just a mere coupon which only gives them a 10% discount on this very high price product, but the government subsidizes around 50% of the products. So now the coupon that the poor who send the children to school can only pay for those basic needs, their dailies, their most basic needs for only 50%, which is a lot less burden than it used to be. And the government does not lose much revenue from that, because we do not do this to every rice company, to every healthcare providing services. It is because we only do it to those companies in this, which can prove that they provide products or service to the poor who send their children to school. And if you question why we go to such extreme, and if you question the effectiveness and why we have to go to such extremes and how we can ensure that those people send their children to school, I may invite you to take a look at how we ensure this. Just like the first speakers have mentioned, we have to inspect them, and those inspections comes in two forms. The first one is that we work with this cooperate with the school to check their attendance records and their enrollments. And let us take a look at what the first speaker from the opposition side came up just to attempt to make false claim to reject our proposal. No. And let us first of all take a look at the two teams provided by the speaker of the opposition side. The first one is belief that the current status quo, people are not only bound by family problems, but they are bound by some kind of values that is inscribed in their status, that they don't value education, ladies and gentlemen, and they believe that the fact that the families don't value education is more important, is more necessary than the food that they don't have to eat, than their basic need, which is actually a false claim. And I'll tell you why. After this, they believe that the goal of today's debate, is to make the family see the importance of education, ladies and gentlemen, which is a funny thing, because we know that they are poor families. Of course, it's good that they see the value of education, but we know what's important to them. What can make them send their children to school? What can make them not having their children at home, to have them work and earn their income to support the family, or to have them with houseworks? It's because we target the most basic thing, the most important result into them, which is their basic needs, healthcare service, and rights. And why only rights? Because we cannot provide much. We are also suffering from economic economic not very up to date to like other developed countries, but we try our best. And at least the target, we already reduced 50% of their spending on rice, which is very much. So now we already target their basic needs. And it is such a funny thing when they see that they don't need basic needs. You can go on not eating for days. Unless you value education, you will send your children to school. You will not ask them to stay home and have your own income for your family. And I just wonder how they can think it out. And again, they keep stressing again that daily needs are not the only things that they suffer, or there may be even more living beyond their living conditions, which is also a very funny thing when they say that they need to see the value of education first before the rights. Just like the question I stated from the beginning of my speech, education or rights. Education or rights is a concept that explains people whether they choose to have education or whether they choose to have food to eat. And of course, the claim already provided they choose food to eat. You cannot go to school empty stomach and you are able to learn. And they also provided an alternative, which we all can see that alternative is they just use it in order to reject our claim, in order to reject our proposal in the sake of the opposition side, when they themselves are not able to provide the reason why, how it will happen. And I tell you why they didn't do it. It's because they simply can't find a better alternatives. Because ours is the only way to achieve a better education improvement in the education system. Because even though they said that they would give jobs to the families, but they did not explain how. They just say that private sector have to cooperate with the government by letting the family work with them without telling how. Well, I tell you how it all comes from education, and that is why we are doing a very big investment on education. And why do I say that my policy is a very big investment on education? The thing is that it does not only help those who want to go to school, but it also helps those who are forced to drop out of school just because they are poor. We are giving them the basic needs. We are giving them 50% off on basic needs and basic need, which is rice and health service. So nowadays, in exchange to do this, the parent who have not sent their children to school have to send their children to school, and the parents who want their children to drop out and come help them with housework have to send their children to school. Have to keep their children going in their education long way round until they finish at least to the secondary education. And those who don't see the value of sending their children to school will now see that even though it is not how they truly value education, but at least they let their children to go there and have education, to not think in the way they are, because they think that at least they will think that, oh, if I let my children stay home and help me with housework or help me with my work, probably I can earn this much, but maybe not as much as I get a coupon and go to buy the rice for 50% off. That is very much a lot. This is how people respond to incentive, which is also inscribed in the principle of economics. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I encourage you to reject the false claim, the attempts to smear generalize just to win the debate by raising superficial alternatives, superficial beliefs on education. And I tell you, ladies and gentlemen, what the government is doing is to show people how basic needs comes before education and how we can achieve education by targeting basic needs. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
The last speaker spoke for 7 minutes and 34 seconds. Now the chair would like to make a break for the WCs.
My precious.
No. I need to get the water and then I'm going to boil this water. Boil cho mọi người boil bia hay tại cho đọng giống như việc của giống chưa có. Cho cái nó chồng chị. Because you are allowed the classification video. Nhưng mà hiện tại maybe tonight you can have for I've been constantly. Make price alternatives. But I trust you can report the alternatives. Because you have to. Yeah, you have to rest. But you can't come up with a better way. That's why I told you we are flawless. Yeah, you pick the most.
You bring another issue in.
At the end of the day, I forgot to look at 50% on my note, but I hope I got it right.
Without further ado, I would like to invite the second speaker of the audience side to deliver a speech here.
Overlaps with Suhail, so we rather not call it an agreement and just go with it. I don't know how to see about that. We can't find many arguments, and if we try to find many arguments, we will end up having weak arguments anyway. Just later try the experiment chắc try new way thì mà comment bên mất mấy chồng change them thôi.
Là chạy khai mũi xin mượn.
Hey, get out! That's my place. Oh, I will sleep on you, get out. I don't care who you are. I just sleep on you.
But time cho chạy khai tới mà quên đi mà đã. Mà khó như vậy không thoáng.
I got say phân tí thôi.
Ôi nhẹ, hôm mình đi tới chơi.
It's okay. I can just sit. Hey, come on, baby. Mình đang quay vô này.
Ồ, đấy à, là sao là có bố ở chi chứ? Bao giờ chi chứ?
Ơi, kinh một lần anh.
You can't speak up.
Đã phải là đối here.
Ladies and gentlemen, I kind of find it funny. What have the government side told you? So throughout the first and the second, they have told you that developing country, people do not have enough money, right? Family don't have enough money. That's why you need to That's why they cannot send their children to school, right? And what is their solution? The students say, okay, I'll give you a 50% coupon so that you can go and buy all your basic stuff that you need, and then you can send their children to school. And let me tell you what they did not do. You know what they did not do during the first and the second stage? They were supposed to tell me how their so-called 50% coupon are going to ensure that parents are going to send their kids to school, and that this policy will definitely be effective. Now let us take a very superficial question before we move on and analyze faster. Question number 1. So is there going to be enough money from the government? This question, they're going to tell us, okay, I'm going to reduce the tax from 10% from whatsoever private sector, and then the government is going to pay 40%. But the point is, in the case of developing countries, are there going to be enough money for the government to pay? Assuming that there is enough money for the government to pay. Number 2, this another superficial question is the very fact that are the families still able to afford, even if it is 50% lower, right? Because in the case, even if it's 50% lower, there's no guarantee that the family are still going to be able to afford in that sense, right? So in the end, if they cannot buy it, they're not going to be able to send their children to school, right? Now let's talk about something deeper, better than this. Now let us analyze the policy of the government side. Even more. So they're telling us that it is okay, right? You give them a 50% coupon. What if the children that they have to be sent to school are the main generator or the main income earner inside of the family, right? So in that sort of case or that sort of condition, so are they going to be able to? Are you going to be able to pay those? Are you ensure that parents are going to have money in order to buy those things, right? Because if they don't have the income earner inside of their school, and income cannot only be income cannot only earn in a legal or in a formal setting, right? Income can be earned in informal setting as well, so just going to the field and so on. Their money can be gained from informal setting, and the money can still be used in the family as well, right? So you don't think of just child labor instead thinking that income is only generated from formal setting. Also, that is also the case that needs to be tackled. And what did the government side tell us even further, right? So they tell us even further, so I'm going to give you this coupon. But what's the one thing they have all told us all this fancy policy about them, all right, giving money, giving these coupons, but and monitor with school, right? But what they didn't tell us, when are you going to give that coupon, right? Now, assuming I didn't listen, right? Assuming that if you are going to give it before you send the children to school, so what if the parents take the coupon and do not send them to school, right? That is number question. Now, assuming that you are going to give those coupons, right? After they send the children to school, the question is still the same, right? Like I asked you in a very superficial question above, right? Are they still able to pay? Are they still able to pay for the product, and are they still able to earn the money later? And now let's take a look at what we, the opposition side, have told you, right? Now, what have we told you? Now, what we have told you is the very fact that there is a better things, like we acknowledge that the problem might still exist, right? But there is a better thing in order to tackle that problem. What are we going to do? Our policy, our counter plan is a twofold counter plan. Why do we call it a twofold counter plan? Number 1, we're going to make education compulsory, and number 2, we're going to initiate a public-private cooperation in that sense in order to tackle the so-called problem that the opposition side that the government side have brought in. So how are we going to make education compulsory, right? We're going to focus on strengthening the status quo and enforcing negative sanctions on parents, assuming that they're not able to send their children to school, right? So how is this policy? How this first layer of the policy is better than the government side, right? The first layer of the policy is better than the government side because we are going to be able to ensure that parents will send their kid to school, right? So you might say that, okay, the opposition side alternative is completely a sanction on the parents. How are they going to live, right? That's why we have the second fold of our policy, which is an incentivizing policy. What do we do in an incentivizing policy? We are granting employment to parents. So how are we going to granting employment to parents? We are going to grant this employment to parents based on the cooperation with private sector, and in the first phase, the government are going to give them some money, and as the second phase go on, the parents will work for the money, and then they will also minus the money that the government gave them in the first phase, right? So in this sense, nobody is going to lose. Both the government is going to earn, and both the parents are going to earn. And you might ask, why is the private going to cooperate anyway, right? Because the private sector just need workers in order to work it. And what is even more in that sense is that the government is only merely earning workers for the private sectors, right? In that sense, if you were government did, like creating contracts and so on, that means that you don't have to cut tax. The government still retain their tax revenue in that sense under our policy. So if no money is going to be lost from the government side, and the private is going to earn, the private sector are going to earn worker in that sense, as the family parents are also going to earn money, which is an incentivized in order for them to send their children to work, right? So how is this policy? How is our policy better than how is our policy in general is better than what the government side said? What the government side raised, right? And number one, we're able to ensure that parents are definitely going to send their students to school regardless of what, because we're going to put negative sanction on them if they're not going to send their children to school. Number two, what have we done? We are able to incentivize parents at the same time, right? And this does not exist under the policy of the government side, because the government is simply incentivizing, but more like discounting, but they are not managed to tackle the problem from both sides, right? But our side, under our work, we managed to send those children to school, but also still able giving to grandparents some way out, right? And the opposition side, the government side, have been attacking us on how we are saying that the philosophy of the families are dictating them, and they're unable to go out. And that's because why? Because we know that the philosophy exists, right? That parents don't want the children to go to work, don't want the children to go to education. Why? Because they don't have money. And what do we tackle that problem? We're going to use that policy to give the parent to provide the parents the job so that they can earn money with the private-public cooperation, and also to grant to be able to make children achieve education. And I, with all due respect, sir, I am very proud to propose.
You're willing to sacrifice because you value education, you invest in education as much as you can. And they have no right to stand here and say our policies don't work when they don't even have a proper policy of their own.
Ui, châu Thượng Anh.
MPs,
Hi.
MPs of the Conservative and the Labour Party.
Good night. So, ladies and gentlemen, it seems like the opposition side contradict with each other. They don't even understand one another well. So first of all, I am sorry to say that the opposition side don't really understand the core issue happening in the developing country on education itself. So first of all, we need to look at what is the core issue or the deep issue happening in the developing country. It is not just about the value that the families do not send the children to school because they don't see education as necessary. They do, but the problem is that they are not willing to send their children to school because of their lack in basic need. Because when they lack in basic need, they don't have the willingness to send their children to school. And what I'm telling you is that it's not about the value of education that people to send. And even if it's about the value of education, ladies and gentlemen, it is a small problem, and we can take it when our policy works after giving basic needs, so that family are willing to send their children to school. And first of all, it seems like the first speaker and the second speaker are really contradict with one another. First, they come out and say that we need to make their parents understand the value of education, and then, well, they will send their children to go to school. But then the second speaker come up and say that you need to force them. They need to put negative sanction on them, meaning that you need to force them. So, ladies and gentlemen, if they are poor, they don't have money to the willingness to send their children to school, they need to send their children to go to work in order to earn the money. How can you put negative sanction on them? Because even they can't even live on their own, they can't even afford to make a living, to go to make something to eat. So you just impose negative sanction on them, meaning that you're making a oppression on the ordinary people, and this is just a cruel thing that the opposition side mentioned earlier. So first of all, they mentioned about the compulsory in school education. Of course, we all know that education is compulsory, but the way that we do it is not just about oppression like the opposition side mentioned earlier. We do it when we see that the core issue is on the lack of basic needs. Because as the first speaker and second speaker of the government side mentioned earlier, because when parents are really poor, they cannot even afford to make a living. How can they think about education in the first place? Because they need to think about how to earn money in the first place. And this is why we need to support giving them with the policies that we mentioned earlier. And second, they just propose a impractical policies just an alternative to a problem itself. First of all, they just saying that okay, we will provide job to the families itself. But what we need to question is the three questions that you need to answer in order to win this debate. First, what kind of job that the families will do? So are you going to ensure that each family you will be able to fit them to job for them? Are they going to be a farmer to a seller in every family? How can you ensure that those jobs fit their family conditions? Second, how can you do it? Are you going just to have a private sector incorporation to do it? For example, you give them jobs. How can they? You ensure that they have education in order to proceed this work? So it needs to come with education first, and when they are poor, you need to give them something in order for them to send them to school. And second, about the financial itself, it seems like you are just cooperating with the private company, and it seems like you spend even more money and with a false policy. And let me take a look at our policy, ladies and gentlemen. Our policy works better because we do not need to spend much or allocate much money. Why? Because as we have mentioned earlier, we will cooperate with the company by using the tax, and then the government will also subsidize some amount of money in addition to reducing the tax, so that we can provide the coupon in order for the family to do it. And how can we ensure that they will do so? Because when family be able to have a reduction or discount on the coupon, they will be able to support the family, making a living, supporting their basic needs, so that they can send their children to school, which is a long-term investment, which means that we invest in something that makes a long-term impact later in the future. What about their policy? They just come up and say that private sector. What can private sector do? If it's worked in the first place, then why don't we just depend on private sector? And this, ladies and gentlemen, contradict to the policy itself, because when we work too much on private sector, the parents themselves will send their children to work in the families. Why? Because the families themselves need education. They cannot just go to work without education, and this will need to stress on their children. So the children need. Ladies and gentlemen, the children, they will need to ask their their children to do all the jobs rather than the private sector. So the private sector, ladies and gentlemen, their policy is a practical one. So ladies and gentlemen, I do not need to say much. First of all, I need to point out that this side do not really understand the core issue happening in the country. It's not just about the value of the perception. Second, we make according to answering to the first compulsory, we can make it compulsory by making them the incentive to go to work rather than pressing them to do so, because they are ordinary people. When they are poor, they can't send their children to school, and that's why we give them something in order to make them more willing to go to school. Second, the factory, I don't need to say much. It's not going to work. You're going to spend even more rather than our different from our policy, because our policy will ensure long-term run that the family will have the ability to buy and support the family, and then they will send to school, and this policy will work in the long run. Yes.
So
So
how could you know that our policy will spend more while we can get the money from the private lab as well, and we can.
Okay, thank you. So, but first of all, you need to understand that what kind of job are you going to cooperate? Are you going to ensure that those families can be able to fit in the job section? Are they going to be able to work without skills, ladies and gentlemen? This question they need to understand. They need to answer what kind of jobs are they going to fit one size fit all for all the families when they have different needs, different contexts, ladies and gentlemen. What about the families that have their own jobs, their own occupations, but they do not have do not earn much, ladies and gentlemen? Their policy is not going to work. It's going to spend more, and they don't even understand the core issue that's happening. And right now, ladies and gentlemen, we need to understand that when family have money, when family have their basic need, they are willing to spend more, and this is what we want from the students to send parents to send them to school. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You have spoke for exactly 7 minutes. Without further ado, we would like to invite the third speaker of the Elsin side to deliver his speech. Here.
có bị problem ចឹងអត់ត្រូវគេគាត់
trong cái
trong cờ chủ thu xanh mà
chứ mẹp xa này anh đặt to thì mấy chục bạc anh cái xa rồi
lạ là
thì lần luôn
anh cho ăn nhỉ là hồi cái ta sẽ anh đặt cái hai lồng nó nãy mà vì anh có cứ có bệnh nó ăn đỡ mình đỡ chạy bệnh nhau mà sơ phải bệnh gì ăn đỡ mới chỉ chơi này thôi
đấy
anh ấy yes cho đấy cái đặt chân anh ăn nhớ đặt đây là học nó
cũng tân bộ
vậy đó đặt tay anh nó khẹt thì khẹt chân tới
nó chưa cái này
mới mới anh mới bên trong con cam đá thì đánh cái ba đá đặt đi
anh em mà cầm cái mắt bắt ra đây này
cha chuẩn bị xưa đi không có sợi
cha ơi và chaจะเดี๋ยวซื้อบ้านอันให้ได้ที่โยมาในประกาศก็ถึงนั้นจริงรายการตัวสุ่มแต่ป่ะ
education
Fluffy number 2.
Đây.
It's really fluffy today.
no
nè ôi là
he's just adorable I don't think so let's
Yeah,
tell
it's
him
just a room.
just a room cái ốm còn vai anh chưa
thầy xuất được đó bây giờ thì con đưa
hay mình dây
như xoay xoay
vậy
ý dây má
Thêm hai quần
anh
tinh
vai thì mình
mấy cái cặp
là người nó
yeah
cái
Hôm nay tôi cất sạp cất xăm xoay vầy
ô nó ngay đi về chắp của anh vô lấy máu
Ladies and gentlemen, the first thing that we need to address in the issues here, ladies and gentlemen, the core problem of the issues today is deeper than that. Ladies and gentlemen, the government team sees only the superficial issue, and what is that? The lack of financial support. Ladies and gentlemen, the issue is deeper than that, and what is that? The poor family philosophy. Ladies and gentlemen, education. It is a long-term thing. And how could you believe that in the developing countries, the family could actually believe that education can help them get get out of the poverty, or you could actually what you could actually is that what education could actually help them. That how could you know that the poor family could actually think that they don't have those philosophies that education can help them out of poverty. So the issue is, ladies and gentlemen, is a state of mind. It's not just the financial support. And how could you? So the first thing that you need to do is to change the state of mind, or to rule out the state of mind first before moving deeper into the financial support that we need to address, ladies. That we need to address. So the first thing is that. So the policy and in the motion today, what we need to address is two things. The first one is the specific form of welfare of welfare here, ladies and gentlemen, giving coupons. So the first issue that we need to address by giving coupons. So how do you integrate that the coupons would actually work within the country, ladies and gentlemen? For example, there are private companies who, if you were to incorporate the coupon into the system that these people in the system that we need that. So how do you integrate that? The coupon within the system in the private business, it would cost more to just actually, for example, you are going to have seminars for the private companies to accept the coupon, or to accept the coupon, or anything to even integrate the coupon within the system of the business. And the second thing is that if within the 50% discount. So, ladies and gentlemen, could you ensure that the family could actually have enough with the 50% discount, or the 15% discount that they could actually fulfill in their daily life, ladies and gentlemen? So what if in a family that their parents could not even work and their children is the only source of income? This policy could not address this issue at all. And in the case how to ensure that the family would send their children to work. So, ladies and gentlemen, what the government team is trying to say is that you inspect, and what if they do not do that? You would cut the welfare payment, ladies and gentlemen. So what the government team is trying to say is that the poor families they need those money, and with if you were giving money, if you want them to send their students to go to school, they would just actually go to school. So what if the poor family would not want, even if you cut the welfare payment, and they do not want to go to school again? Ladies and gentlemen, the government team do not address this particular issue as well. And even if before when you are and what is more important, if that what the opposite, what the government team is saying, that it is important. They need those basic needs, and they need those food or those shelter, those money in order to survive, ladies and gentlemen. So what if, in that case, they do not send their children to school and let their children to work and get and accumulate more money? And this is and the poor family with the poor family philosophy, thinking that education is not the source of solution in order to let them work. So do you think that they would choose on a solution that is cumulative rate, receiving the job and as well as the basic needs? And what the policy, our policy here, it means that within the education and rights, we are getting both. Yes.
What is the point of debating on the status quo when we already have policies tackling the value, the family's value on education, meaning that they already there are many working policies on this, and it does not work, and they still drop out, and the people don't send the children to school, and it's already on the status quo.
Ladies and gentlemen, so let's see our counter plan to address this issue for you. So the first question. So how do my policy address the problem better? So firstly, it is informed into two layers, ladies and gentlemen. Education, it is compulsory in order to ensure that the students will go to school by posing negative sanction, and so what the opposition team, what the government team is saying, that when you are posing the negative sanction, and what if the family, what if the family, what if the family do not, what if the family could not even afford because they are poor already, ladies and gentlemen? In this case, there are two layers. If the children, if the family want their children to go to school, in this case it means that we are incentivizing with our second layer. We are incentivizing the family in order to send them to school, and by incentivizing here, it means that we are providing jobs. And what jobs, ladies and gentlemen? We are providing vocational skills. We are providing vocational skill job, for example, and the second, and also vocational skills here. It is a private company. So why do we need private? It's not just only private companies, but it is also private incorporated with the government, because we need to check and balance that the government could actually assist on assist the private companies in order to actually work better on giving jobs to those people. And also the second issue is that the jobs here, it means that when you are providing a job, so how could ensure that they have enough money? So firstly, that when in a job, you have the contract, you have the insurance, you have the healthcare insurance and all of that. So in this case, it means that they are also the minimum wage for them. They are signing a contract, they have the minimum wage for them to actually gain those, in order to gain those money, in order to support their education. And if they do not send their children to go to school, it means that and in this case, it means if they do not, in this case, if they do not send their children to go to school, it means that they will receive those negative sanction, and by the negative sanction, by the negative sanction here, it means that they would be, for example, working for the state in order to and also get those salary, but it's not a job that they would prefer, but actually a job given by state. So in this case, it means that our policy could actually ensure that that the children could actually go to school by the negative sanction, and at the same time, we are ensuring for the family who want to go to school to actually receive the incentives to go to school as well. So ladies and gentlemen, weighing the policy of the government thing, they do not address the core issue, which is the poor people philosophy. By our opposition team, we address all of the issues. Thank you, but bad. You can't take call. It's kind of your issue. You get back.
5 seconds.
Bad. Keep calm. Bad.
Please.
Bad. Teamwork. Bad.
Tao sao share được tao share vậy luôn. 4 minutes.
And
4 or 5. 4 or 5. 4, right?
Ơi, bay bộ khăn vậy á.
Ôn khuyên mấy là tao cái đó lời. Tao buồn rồi.
Ai trong cái bao vậy sẽ đáp ứng mình cho ai từ tôi không lãng energy không.
Bad. Cái tha cho chuyện.
Ê, bao nhiêu người
Người nắng chốt.
Oh, wait, we asked me.
Mami sao con bông? ไม่ได้
Oh, today debate.
Because when I feel sickly, I kind of feel angry at everyone. Well, especially the opposite side. Their faces become
Nobody has stop.
Hey!
Hay sao đấy lại không có lại mỏng á bà chết mỏng á ai na lại na chuồn
You almost hit my face right now.
Wait, Trang nghe sự đấy ạ. Không thể ông nữa. Okay, so one thing that the opposition side and the government agree on in this very debate is that in the developing country, people are driven by are under poor circumstances. That especially there are a lot of poor families in which parents could not afford to send them to school. Right, they're living under poverty, so it's very difficult. Right, that is one thing that we both definitely agree on. But the problem that we don't disagree on is the policy. We don't agree on is the solution to solve this very problem, right? And now let us take a look at what the government side tell us, right? So under the policy, they tell us that you need a $50 cuppage in order 50% cuppage in order to pay for your basic family, right? Basic family. But under our world, we've told you that we're not going to just simply incentivize them with a policy which is not going to guarantee that children will be going to school, but rather we'll be imposing a compulsory education. We are focusing on reinforcing status quo even further, making sure that students go to school while incentivizing parents by providing employment to the parents, right? So this is a two-fold policy. But let us take a look at what they have been what they told us further, right? We do acknowledge that these problems all exist, and it's simple, right? Developing countries are poor, that's why parents cannot send their children to school, right? But what we are focusing on this very day is that there is embedded in there a poor family philosophy in which you shouldn't send children to school, right? Because education is not important, right? But what is our policy? What is our counter plan going to do, right? Our counter plan is going to challenge their parents' perspective by how, right? They're going to provide opportunities in which children could go to school under our policy, in which children can go to school and in which parents can work, right? So under a circumstance that they are no longer driven by their needs for daily basis, meaning that you can actually go on and educate parents' perception in that sense, right? The reason why the status quo never worked because parents keep on being driven by their daily need all the time, right? That's why we're using our twofold policy, tackling on both, incentivizing, tackling on both, posting compulsory education so that children can stay at school by providing job for parents so that parents have the money so that they can think, right? Starting to see, change the perception of towards the education, right? So this is how we are going to achieve it. And they keep telling us that this is not going to work. We have been changing, right? But they do not see that how our policy is going to achieve that, right? And what have they told us further? Now let us talk about money, the case that we want to discuss so much, right? We say, how many people have to pay under their policy? Under the government's policy, the government has to reduce tax 10%. And then we have the government has to the private right. Basically, the government has to pay to bear the cost for 50%, right, of the product. But what do the government have to pay under our policy? The government do not have to pay. Why? Because the private sector is going to be integrated in, and it's going to save that problem from the government by providing job and employment under the contract with the government, right? So in this sense, who is losing, right? Is the government losing? No, the government is not losing. So is the private sector losing? The private sector is not losing. So is the parent losing? Parents are not losing either because they're going to have the job and they're going to be able to afford those products or going to be able to sustain that daily because we have the minimum wage already, right? And in those developing countries, and we are sure that these are going to provide enough children for them. So are children going to lose? No, they're not going to lose. Why? Because they're going to go to school and get education at the end of the day, right? So basically, our policy are able to work on revolutionizing parent ideology toward this. Number two, we're going to make sure that the government do not lose the revenue and the money. Number three, we're going to make sure that the private sector are dragged in and involved in development education in our country. And number four, we're going to make sure that children can go to school. Yeah, thank you. It's four.
It's four.
Okay.
Nice sets.
Ôi vai em là hơi con này aggressive hay vai em lên
Anh ca sao có theo hay sao kia chơi mình
Ôi anh liền coi ba sexy đi đấy.
Ôi
Mong mình thôi thì đấy chỗ mấy thôi tụi anh đặt nước thôi cũng
Này,
không.
này.
Ôi, buông ai quay bát.
Hiện đang tập
Ê, đi nhỉ?
Thôi nhau mang ra nha mọi người. ขอสับแกะลายมา
Ô nên mình để đi check around my eyes, not to check my ad friend my
check
my ad friend. I come to all set đi check around my.
Tại hai chạy mai đã phone được xe tới đây.
Cái bánh tắc xong đâu không môi mày.
Without further ado, I would like to invite the last speaker of the house to deliver her speech. Here,
Gọi đi
here.
bay, nghe kênh.
So no more start yet, please. I beg you.
No, even if you beg me, I can't stop it. Ta tham mấy mà ăn.
Please bear in mind, you should stand in the middle.
Con ta mai cây ba đấy.
Ta tham mấy là gì?
Ladies and
Ở đây
gentlemen,
bạn
what
đại
I
đại
want
nè.
to clear is that.
Đây tham fair to answer à. Đây thì gì đến nơi
Để mai cho mọi người
Chị đi đâu fair to
Everybody
answer
been
questions answer by hay chăng hay con được đi chung.
Every time we ask them this question, they keep making up new information.
Mình mới
Ở
ăn
đây
đây.
bạn ha.
Ấy, cho 10% mình mà bị nè.
Ê, à nói đó, em xem cha tôi thấy còn.
Cái man mà bị nè, là bạn bị nè. Anh mình make it up.
Ê, chú sẽ phải là assuming.
Mấy này nó mua nha.
Overall, I think we are superficial. Fair to question.
We don't have to assume that solutions are superficial.
Without further delay, here. Say introduce us.
Today, we all understand that education is the most important thing that both every branch of the government, because we know that it will lead the country, the individual, the family, and our economy to a better stage. And we do not just simply receive it, and we do not simply give up on it and rely ourselves on superficial things just because we are a developing country. But we are trying to do this. The government side has been trying to lay out a very careful plans, including half the government would obtain those coupons in a very economical and technical way, while the opposition side just come up to reject it by giving their superficial, assuming, and their assumptions just in order to counter our proposal for the sake of the opposition side. But ladies and gentlemen, this is such a disappointment. When we ask the government to work so hard in order to find a technical way, a possible way, a way to put our investment in education of those children who by faith or whatever happen to be born in a poor family, but a parent with poor decision to not sending them to education. But we do not blame them. We understand that even though some parents, just like for the opposition side, have assumed that all the poor parents, they are selfish. They believe that they have a philosophy that even if education is not important, and if they believe that if those poor parents have had value education, they would have sent their children to study even if they don't have rights to eat, which is a very false assumption, but we do not rely on it, even though we acknowledge that some parents are very selfish because of gambling or other social factors, but that's our minority. But we do not just use this assumption in order to neglect the majority who actually care about their children, but they are not able to do it. And even if those minority, now they have an option, they would at least, if they don't love their children, if they don't understand education, at least they would send their children to school just for the sake of the $50, 50% off coupons, even if they don't love their children and they don't care. And we also have the parents who love their children in education but are unable to send their children to school just because of their living conditions, to be able to live off their life by a 50%. Of course, we would like to provide more, but we care about our economy. We do not do what the opposition side did by simply oppressing people to go there. We don't care about whether they have rights to eat, they have food to eat or not. They must go to study, and we don't oppress the company that whether you are able to take them or not. You must take them because you have to have this economy, and they call it an investment, ladies and gentlemen. I call it a third-grade assumption. That is assumption that like a third-grade kid. I'm sorry to say that it sounds rude, but every time we ask them the question of why their alternative could work, but they fail to answer directly to our question, and they keep adding new information from speaker to speaker. And I assume that they have listening problems because they just come up and ask us the same question. And I would like to disregard all these questions because from the first results, because we already proved everything. And if they don't understand it, it's their listening problems, ladies and gentlemen. Now would like to stress more on what I want to say to everybody as well as the opposition side. As I would like to mention again, we have worked so hard to draft out a plan because we can't understand what the core issue is. It's not because they have the philosophy. It's because of their living condition. It's the first step that we have to tackle with if we want to improve it. Even though the investment sounds a little bit not very much
there yet. We cannot see it yet because we haven't tried. But at least it is not as superficial as there. And as I said in the beginning, education worth everything. If this investment that we put in might yield just a little result, it's worth everything. And we would like to take that step with consideration and care by the technical means provided by the government side and to the opposition side. Don't tell me you care, but you don't understand them practically, and you use your view to judge them as selfish philosophy inspiring people, and you just reject our proposal when you yourself don't understand or don't even care about those people. You don't understand what they need at all, and you don't even understand what is speaker in your team and in your team has spoken. You didn't listen to yourself. How can you understand those people, ladies and gentlemen? You cannot trust the future of education in our schools, in our investment to these people who don't even understand what they are talking about at all. So in the end of the day, we would like to strongly support to our carefully drafted proposal, ladies and gentlemen, for our education. You jealous people.
Bà chồng không biết, chồng không biết chặt bà.
I have a minute. Oh my god, it record everything.
Nên là cái trong ban này shape rồi